Thank you for listening to The Luminous Mind. Remember to subscribe to our free podcast so you won't miss any of our illuminating content. Here is episode 199.
The creativity that you give these kids in the kitchen, even though they're following these recipes that are standardized and they're, meeting our national school lunch requirements, they're still allowed creativity and problem solving in just making that recipe and creating these menus for their fellow students. And they're feeding their community, and they're feeding them beautiful, healthy, local, organic food.
Benjamin Franklin once said, "Do not curse the darkness, rather light a candle instead." If you're ready to set your mind on fire, then prepare yourself for the Luminous Mind with your host, Rebecca Bowman.
Today's fire starter is Emelia Miguel. Emelia is known as Miss Emelia to her students, is the food service director of the Pacific Elementary School in Davenport, California. Along with the responsibilities as food service director, Emelia is in charge of the world-renowned, award-winning FoodLab program. This program brings 5th and 6th grade students into the kitchen classroom where they learn knife and life skills. Founded 34 years ago by Stephanie Rogest, this program is the heart of the rural school. Emelia worked side by side with Miss Rogest from 2007 to 2013, learning the techniques and skills needed to teach 11 and 12-year-olds how to cook school lunch for approximately 100 people a day. For the last 4 years, with the help of 2 other food service staff, Emelia has raised the participation rate of the National School Lunch Program from 79% with only 37% free and reduced lunch rate at school. In order to fund FoodLab, Emelia has raised almost $10,000 annually at the incredible Farm to Table dinner. Other revenue for the program is generated through federal and state reimbursement and the sales of lunches to parents and guests. When not cooking for students, Emelia can be found testing out recipes at home with her family, still loving the kitchen in her time off. Once the meal is over, Emelia also enjoys reading historical fictions, snowboarding, and road trips. Welcome, Emelia.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
This is going to be a super exciting podcast as we hear more about how you're teaching students knife and life skills. But before we get into any of that, can you please tell our audience a little bit more about yourself?
Sure, I'd love to. I grew up in Davenport, Iowa. I was born there, and then I grew up all over eastern Iowa. My dad currently still lives there, so I'm lucky enough to go and enjoy the summer times in Iowa. And I currently live in Santa Cruz, California, with my daughter and husband and our dog Buddy. And what else would you like to know?
Well, that sounds like a fun switch from Davenport, Iowa to Davenport, California, like we talked about. Same name, correct? Or
it was definitely destined to happen, I guess. It was destiny.
You went from winter to summer like all the time, correct? Sounds great.
I know.
Well, great.
It's a good life, yes.
Yeah, we talked a little bit in your intro about, what you're doing with FoodLab and bringing kids into the classroom and teaching them all these skills. But tell us a little bit more about that work and how that connects. How that all works.
So our 5th and 6th grade classroom teacher, she divides our kids up into math groups, and it's usually math groups. And so they come to me in their math group, and we have about 5 kids each day, and they will come in to the kitchen, and they're divided up into 4 jobs. We have a prep, a cook, a baker, and a manager, and each one of those jobs has specific tasks. So the prep is obviously going to cut vegetables and make the salad. We always have a beautiful salad of local vegetables. And then they'll also do the fruit. They work with Violi, our FoodLab instructor, and they learn good clean practices and washing vegetables. And then we have our baker, who usually bakes rolls, hamburger buns. They bake bagels. We make everything from scratch except the sliced bread. We haven't perfected the sliced bread yet. So the baker they'll also make rec snack like muffins or banana bread or whatever we have to use up. And then we also have the manager, and they're in charge of the kitchen. So they're trying to make sure that everybody's on task and everybody is doing what they're supposed to be doing in order to get the lunch out on time. And then we also have the cook, and the cook is usually the person that works with me the closest because we're cooking the entrees. So we're making the marinara sauce for spaghetti or lasagna, and we're making pizzas or whatever else is on the menu, tacos, whatever. Basically, the menus that we design, they're just simple foods that they can then try to make at home. So we're not doing anything very fancy or complicated. It's just basic kid food like macaroni and cheese from scratch, or pizza all from scratch. Like we make the dough, we make the sauce. And so then the goal is so they can learn how to cook and do it themselves at home. So they can help out their parents, and they can go to college and be able to cook for themselves and their roommates if their roommates didn't have a food lab and things like that. So
no, it's really cool because that's one of the struggles that kids have, the whole adulting is they don't know how to cook for themselves. So that's great. And finish up what you were saying.
And it goes down to just like the basic knowledge of how to hard boil an egg, So if nothing else, they can make a peanut butter sandwich and a hard boiled egg for a snack. And it's just very basic cooking skills.
That's awesome. Well, and one of the things that I find so intriguing about this program is their traditional public school. Do you want to kind of give us a background of maybe why you guys can do this type of thing? One of the things that we talked about before we started recording is that, with all of the federal and state regulations anymore, I just find it really intriguing that you're bringing kids into the kitchen and they're actually cooking, in regards to, even though there's different cleanliness and, different things like that maybe some regulation would stop other schools from doing this. Tell us a little bit more about how your school is set up to be able to handle all this.
Pacific Elementary School is a one-school district. And so our principal is also our superintendent, and we have 3 people on our school board, 4, including our superintendent principal. So we are able to do what we do because we have the autonomy to do it up in Davenport. We don't have to, we're not being compromised by, 20 other schools. We're just one little school with about 140 students, and our community really supports what we do. We have FoodLab as, an amazing program at the school. We also have a program called Independent Study, which is a hybrid homeschool and classroom environment. So, and my daughter went through the Independent Study program there at Pacific 2nd through 6th grade. And so she had Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday at school where parents teach classroom curriculum. And then on Wednesdays and Fridays are homeschool days. And Fridays were devoted, or they are devoted, to field trips. And the parents decide and design the field trips that the kids go on. And this is all supported by our public school.
That's awesome.
And it's because the parents have guided and dreamed about these things happening.
Yeah. Well, and like we talked about, it's a long going program, 34 years that this has been able to happen. But let's kind of go into maybe your journey, your story of of how you got involved with this and, really gained your passion and your mission for this type of education.
So my daughter, she's my passion, and she's the impetus for all of this food stuff. We moved to Morro Bay from San Diego when my daughter was about 1 year old. And when she started kindergarten, we sent her to San Luis Obispo to a public school. And I couldn't believe the amount of junk food that this 5-year-old had access to on a daily basis. And so when I confronted the kindergarten teacher and I was told, well, make sure you feed her well at home, I decided I needed to do something about it. And so I helped reinvent the garden program at that school, and I started having regular conversations with the food service director of San Luis Obispo City Schools, and just tried to get the local produce into the schools and started having those conversations. And it just wasn't happening fast enough. And it felt like such a struggle and such a fight. And I heard about FoodLab in Davenport, California, and my husband actually got transferred up the coast. And so we moved to Santa Cruz, and we sent our daughter to Davenport, to Pacific Elementary School. I felt like I didn't have to fight anymore. Like I didn't have to be at all concerned about the health and wellness of my child at school, because I completely trusted FoodLab and Stephanie Raga's vision of creating a healthy environment at school for children.
Well, and I think it's such a great, like we talked about kind of before, that they're learning like so many different skills, and then they're learning how to, these are life skills, this is stuff that they're going to use forever. And they're learning about healthy food, and they're learning how to cook fresh things and all of that stuff that's kind of missing in our education anymore. I think it's such an amazing thing that they've done, Stephanie and the whole Davenport school that you've got there, to be able to create this for kids, and as well as for, maybe some of the homeschool kids that are coming in and learning stuff like this too. Let's talk about maybe some challenges though that you had along the way. I mean, to keep this going for 34 years, there's got to be stuff that's been difficult and stuff to keep it going. And not only to mention, we were kind of chuckling about this before we even began recording. It's hard having 5-6 different students in the kitchen every day. Let's talk about some of those challenges you've had and what you've learned along the way.
I think that some of the biggest challenges, definitely the financial issues that we have. We do have to fund this program. We are part of the National School Lunch Program, so majority of our funding does come from federal reimbursements from the sale of student lunches. And then we also have a lot of adults eat at our table. Like we have parents that come in and want to eat with their children, and we invite them in, and they love to come for lunch. And most of our staff eats every day, so that's a generator of funds. But we also have to do a big fundraiser every year, and we've done an annual farm to table dinner for 6 years now, and our next one is October 7th. And one of our families, they have a beautiful farm called Green Oaks. They are on the North Coast near Pescadero, and they donate their land to us. And so we set up this big, long table set for about 120 people. And then the kids and the parents and I cook all week, and we create this amazingly beautiful 5-course meal. And we serve them appetizers and cocktails and all the wonderful things you do at a farm-to-table dinner that's locally grown. Most of the produce is donated. Last year, Root Down Farms donated chicken, and all Route 1 donated tons of produce. And it's an amazing community effort.
Well, and is your food more expensive? Where you're doing like a lot of really fresh food and stuff like that. Is that one of the challenges too? Just the cost of trying to eat healthier than, just the stuff that's grown or,
Yeah. The reheat and serve is definitely cheaper. We do sell our lunches. Let's see, this year we raised the price to $3.60 for a student lunch. And the eggs are organic, the chicken is organic, the beef, the ground beef that we use, and the roast that we use is organic, grass-fed from just up the road from Swanton Pacific or Left Coast Beef in Pescadero. And then, so it's $3.60 for a student meal, and then we just raised the price for adult. And off the top of my head, I want to say that we raised it to $6, but I can't remember exactly. So it's about $6 for an adult meal.
Wow. Well, and what she's talking about from the reheat is it reheat and serve? What we were talking about, maybe you can explain this better to our audience, is that, yeah, it's cheaper for like a traditional school to eat because all the food is created in one place and then it's taken out to the other schools. Is that correct? I mean, tell how yours is different in the way that it's all done in the school versus having it brought in. Can you explain that a little better?
Being that we're a one school district, we have one kitchen. It's in the heart of the school. We are the heart of the school. And we cook everything from scratch right there and serve it right then and there. And we don't ever reheat anything or, we're not sending it out. We're not getting processed food in that we have to reheat. So being that we're part of the National School Lunch Program, we do get a lot of our food from commodities, but we buy brown box, what they call brown box. So we get, brown rice from the USDA foods. We get a lot of our pork from the USDA foods. What else do we buy? Flour, whole wheat flour, and frozen corn and frozen green beans. We get some of that kind of thing from USDA foods, which helps offset our costs. The way that a lot of school food service programs work nowadays is they have a central kitchen where they cook a lot of things from scratch, and then they package it up and send it out to their satellite schools. And at the satellite schools, they have ovens that they reheat the food and then they serve it to the kids. So most of the school sites, for instance, like in Santa Cruz City schools, they have one central location where they cook the food, and then the rest of them are just reheat and serve sites. And they're not getting food that just comes right out of the kitchen.
Yeah. And that's definitely, just as far as healthy wise, that's not the most healthy way to go for their food as well. So that's what's so awesome about this program. Do you want to talk about maybe some of the daily challenges that you have? We talked about just having the kids in the kitchen. What are those challenges, and what do how can you combat like the daily challenges of being able to just work with the kids in the kitchen?
A lot of it has to do with what we just talked about, the reheat and serve versus the fresh food. And it's about flavor. It's about getting kids to try new foods and what flavors they like, and figuring out the recipes and then putting them into the required format and making sure they meet our requirements. Those are all challenges that, they come in one big package of the food that's served on the plate that the kids hopefully will eat. Because I always tell our students when I go and talk to them in the lunchrooms, I say, we're serving you a balanced, nutritious meal. It has your 5 components that we're required to serve you or offer you. And if you don't eat all of them or a little bit of all of them, you're not getting a balanced, nutritious meal. So if you go and you just eat the pasta on your plate, it's not a balanced, nutritious meal. And if you eat a little bit of everything, like your salad and your broccoli and your marinara sauce and your pasta and a little bit of your milk, then that will be a balanced, nutritious meal. That's, I think, one of the biggest challenges. And as far as kids cooking in the kitchen, they have some wild ideas about flavors and what's going to be good. And I let them experiment a little bit, and it's really fun to watch them come up with a list of spices that would be good in the salad dressing, or a list of spices they think go in marinara sauce, and to try to get them to, figure out that on their own and watch their process is a lot of fun. It is also a challenge. And then also a lot of work that we do in the kitchen is math. It's a great way to teach kids fraction math because we scale up recipes and we scale down recipes. And so they're multiplying and they're dividing fractions quite a bit, especially as a baker. So I'll give them a recipe for our pizza crust, and then they have to multiply it by how many people ordered school lunch that day and figure out how many pizzas they're going to have to make. And that's, when they first come in as new 5th graders, it's a lot of time doing that. And it's not something that they can, spend a lot of time on and then, learn their units of measure, and then, because lunch has to be out.
You have to have
12:05.
Well, and you serve
and
it too. That's different than them going through a line, correct?
Exactly. So our students come in at 10 o'clock and they leave at noon after the food is served. And so
2 hours.
by 11:45, everything has to be totally complete. And so, sometimes the pizza crust or the dough doesn't have that long to rise, but we still, make beautiful hamburger buns and beautiful rolls. But yeah, there's this time component. And so they have to manage that time really well, which is why we have our manager, and it's a student manager as opposed to an adult, because those students and that peer pressure will definitely make sure that the food is on time, by 12 o'clock. They'll get it done. I have complete faith in them, and they will. But it's a really stressful, it can be really stressful 2 hours when you've got hormonal kids just, doing whatever they want to do. And you're like, no, you have to get this done.
Yeah, because of the time crunch. I think it's the cool thing about it. I mean, it may be challenging, but at the same time, the learning is so applicable. It's different than learning fractions and stuff out of a textbook. This is actually, I think the learning would stick a little better because the kids are actually, they're creating something with that math. And wow, what a great opportunity for them to be able to do that for their peers and for each other. Great. Awesome.
Just different methods of learning, alternative classrooms, just different places that students can learn the best and feel the best. Some of our most outstanding students in the kitchen are the ones that cannot sit still in the regular classroom environment. And so this gives every student a place to shine. Like some of the kids, there's this one boy who was just so wild. He could not sit still in the classroom, and he was just a wild child. And he would come into the kitchen and you would give him a knife and he would focus, and everyone was just like, oh my gosh, you gave him a knife? Like, he's got incredible knife skills, and he could be an amazing butcher one day, but they just couldn't believe that I would trust him, of all kids, with a knife. And it's just, it's that trust. It comes back to that trust thing. But
I think that's a challenge, like have the trust to hand a kid a knife. It's just an amazing, I still am just baffled that, state and government officials allow this to happen, and they don't. I mean, everyone's so supportive. It's awesome.
For my daughter's school, it was just on this steering committee trying to figure out, where the school's headed and in the next 5 to 10, 15 years. And I was on the subcommittee for alternative ways of learning. And it really spoke to me, because there are just so many different ways that students can shine. And we've pigeonholed ourselves in this, with the classroom, with the desks and the whiteboards. And it's not the place where all kids are going to be able to do their best.
Yeah.
And I think that the kitchen is really, it's not for everybody. There are those students, we get one student every 2 years that absolutely hates it and will pretend to be sick, because they do not want to be in there. And it's mostly the kids who, they're allergic to work, and they just, they just don't want to work, because it is work, and they see it. We make them do the dishes, not all the dishes, but they have to do at least 3 dishes while they're in there, and learn that, you're going to cook. You have to clean up after yourselves. That's part of the lesson. And the kids who do not like being in the kitchen are the ones who just don't work at home. They don't help their parents. I mean, you can tell. They're just like the kids that play video games and go play outside, and they just don't have any chores or responsibility.
Well, and again, talk about the whole learning. I mean, to be successful in life, another life skill is to have to learn how to work. And that's really missing in our society anymore, because kids aren't, so many things like we talked about before, the food's just handed to them, and they're not seeing like, wow, this takes a lot of work. And anyway, that's awesome. What a great conversation. I just love it. But let's talk about
it really is.
Yeah. I want to hear kind of how your paradigm has changed. You talked about at first working with your daughter's school in San Luis. Am I saying that right? San Luis. Actually, no, that
San Luis Obispo.
Yeah. Working with your daughter there, and then now what you're doing now. Let's talk about how that paradigm of this education has changed over time and with experience.
Well, I think that having that initial conversation with the food service director down there really helped me. It taught me that food service directors have to be a part of this conversation about what we're feeding our kids. And I mean, it's obvious to me, but to some folks, it's not that obvious. And they have to be a part of, learning about new ways to cook and cooking from scratch rather than the reheat and serve model. And if we're going to have these conversations, we also have to make sure that we're building working kitchens in schools and not just these reheat and serve kitchens. Like when I would go into the kitchen in San Luis, there wouldn't be a knife or a measuring spoon anywhere in sight. Like it was just literally an oven that they had racks. They would put their food on the racks in the plastic and then give that to the kids.
Wow.
And so having working kitchens is essential to our children, teaching our children as we want them to be taught, as, the whole child, not just, giving them their math facts. And I think I used to be a firm believer in, learning your math facts, and I still am, but I also know that the soft skills that we're talking about, like the communication skills and the decision-making skills that we're teaching them in these in the FoodLab kitchen are really essential to creating these very productive and successful children.
Before we go on, let's listen to these messages.
Hey, Firestarter, are you looking for a new way to listen to the Luminous Mind? Try listening on Stitcher. Haven't heard of Stitcher? Think of it as radio on demand. You can listen to the Luminous Mind anytime, anywhere. There is no downloading, no syncing, no wasted memory. Just stream your favorite podcasts such as the Luminous Mind. Stitcher is available on iOS, Android, Nook, iPad, and also from your favorite internet browser. Don't have Stitcher? Download it free today at Stitcher.com or in the App Store. And make sure you rate and review the Luminous Mind so together we can continue to light minds on fire and change the paradigm of education.
Welcome back to the Luminous Mind with Emelia Miguel, teaching us about FoodLab, the kitchen's classroom, an alternative classroom for learning. I love the paradigm shift of just taking, it's not just about feeding kids, it's about teaching them on top of, using the fact that the kids need to be fed as a tool to teach the kids how to do a lot of these really, like we talked about before, they're life skills. These are skills that the kids will use their whole life of, not only math, but of how to manage a kitchen, how to cook, how to make things that maybe they wouldn't, if we just fed the kids, they wouldn't learn how to really do it themselves. I think that's just the most awesome paradigm shift. And sadly, our society seems to be going more just, we just want to get it done, and versus like, we want to use this opportunity to teach these kids this amazing thing. Is that, do you want to follow up with anything like that?
It's true. There is this idea that fast and easy is the best way. And I don't believe that that's true.
It's a missed opportunity, correct?
It really is. And the empowerment and the creativity that you give these kids in the kitchen, even though they're following these recipes that are standardized and they're, meeting our national school lunch requirements, they're still allowed creativity and problem solving in just making that recipe and creating these menus for their fellow students. And they're feeding their community, and they're feeding them beautiful, healthy, local, organic, mostly food.
Yeah.
And I love it. It's empowering for me.
That's awesome. Well, let's kind of talk about maybe some successes that you've seen with the style of education. They have a great fun video. It's about 6.5 minutes on the website that explains the program, but then you also have 6 points of success on that website. Can you tell us about those and how you're using like the FoodLab to teach these 6 points of success?
It's been so long since I've looked at that, and I'll have to pull it up.
You know what? Let me read them to you, and then maybe you can talk about how you're using those for success. The first thing that they talk about, the first point was kitchen skills. You know, how are you using kitchen skills to help provide success in learning? And we kind of talked about that, I guess, already, but.
Yeah, and they're taking what they learn in the classroom, such as just basic reading skills, and they're learning, they're reading recipes, and then they're taking their math skills, their fraction math and their decimal math and their percentages. They're using those to scale up or scale down recipes. English language learners, this is really, really essential that they learn how to read a recipe, and it helps them just because we read it together sometimes, and then they're like, okay, I got this. I can read this little piece of paper and figure out how to make, a loaf of bread or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and presentation skills too. I mean, I'm looking at a picture of the table and how you've put flowers on, and you've got the butter in a cute little basket versus, anyway, it's a lot different table setting than just like throwing having the kids go through a line and letting them sit down wherever. And anyway, that's what I see that too. Those types of skills as well.
That's really important. Our lunchrooms are part of our program. They're part of FoodLab. So it's not like we just we just serve them their food and then they leave. The lunchrooms are where the staff and the students have time to talk with one another, because our staff, they eat with our students. And I also go out into the lunchrooms and talk to we have a lower grade lunchroom and an upper grade lunchroom, and I go out and talk to them, the students, every day. And we talk about nutrition, health, manners. For the first few weeks of school, it's just, trying to get them to put their napkin on their lap.
That's awesome.
And we teach them how to set a table. And so some of our students do help. We have aides that come out and set our lunchrooms for us. And I know that's, there aren't very many classroom aides left, but we do have classroom aides at our school, and that's really, an amazing thing. And I really appreciate them. And they come out and help with the setup of lunch. And so they also help the students learn that, the fork goes on the left-hand side and the cup goes on the right-hand side. And then we do serve them a full plate of food. And we also have what's called an offer versus serve model. We offer them bowls of certain things. It just depends on the day, but usually it's the fruit that we offer them, and we plate everything else.
That's awesome.
We offer them milk as well. So
yeah.
It's a beautiful lunchroom, and we make sure our Life Lab, they pick all of our flowers for us, and they learn how to arrange flowers and put them on our tables for us, our Life Lab students.
Well, and that's
usually the kindergartners.
That's the second point, connection to Life Lab, which Life Lab, and maybe you want to explain a little better. This is how the website says it. It's a program that works in tandem with the Life Lab, or the FoodLab, program works in tandem with the Life Lab program, where children plan, tend, and harvest their plots in the school garden. And we kind of talked about this with John Fisher a little bit about FoodLab and how, schools. So you have a garden at the school. Is that correct?
We do. We have a beautiful plot of land, and I couldn't tell you how big it is, but we have several raised beds, and our kindergarten through fourth grade go out there on a regular basis. And the preschoolers, they have their own little beds in their preschool yards, so they also get Life Lab lessons. And we have a Life Lab instructor. Her name is Trish, and we also have John Fisher. He is a dad at our school, so we're so lucky to have him there. But they run the Life Lab program, and we get a lot of our herbs from them, and they harvest quite a bit of kale and some lettuce. This year we got some avocados from our avocado tree. They also planted an orchard this year, so we'll see some fruit in a few years.
That's cool.
It is so wonderful. So it's not only just existing, it's expanding.
Yeah.
So it really speaks to our school and what our community values.
Yeah. Well, and the third point is to learning about our rich agriculture community. I think that having a garden in the school, as well as you say that there's several areas in Davenport where there's small organic farms, that the children kind of learn this connection from the food they're eating to where it's grown type of thing. I mean, how do you implement that? Is that pretty much summed up, or do you have something to add to that?
You definitely summed it up, but when I do go and speak to the students in the lunchrooms, we do have those conversations. For instance, on Earth Day, I said, we aren't doing anything out of the ordinary today, but what do you think we do on a daily basis that helps our earth? And they got it. They're like, we buy local produce. We try to buy organic produce so we don't harm butterflies and,
put chemicals in the ground.
And they got it. They knew what we were doing because we talk about it so often, and our community values those things.
That's really neat. The fourth point is the cultural and historical connection with food. And we talked about pasta and marinara sauce, but how else are you using the menus to create like that diverse cultural, sort of food experience for the kids?
This is one of the reasons why I love our school so much, and I love this program so much. Every other year, our 5th and 6th grade students have the opportunity to go to Yosemite, to the historic village of Wawona. And in order to prepare for their time at Wawona, throughout the school year, they learn their character that they're going to portray in Wawona, the people who developed Yosemite, who founded the national park. So they go to Wawona and they prepare for it by researching characters that were founders of Yosemite or who lived in Yosemite a long time ago, like late 1800s. And then in FoodLab, we complement that learning by looking up historical recipes from the late 1800s, and we create foods that they can then take to Wawona and use as they're portraying their characters for 24 hours in this historical village as characters from the late 1800s. And then they so we've made ketchup and we've made jam and marmalade. And so that's one way that we complement that. And then also during the holidays, well, throughout the year, we celebrate all different holidays and traditions. And so we're able to explore different cultures that way. This year, the 5th and 6th graders will be studying ancient world cultures in history. And so each month, depending on where they're at in the world and what they're studying, I will put a menu on that month that complements their history, such as when they're studying India, we'll have an Indian menu, and then when they're studying ancient Egypt, we'll do something Egyptian.
That's cool.
And
yeah,
I love it. I love it. And like I said, during the holidays, it's not just Christmas and Hanukkah. We try to do all different cultures, and I did have to stop doing the French because crepes were too hard for that many people.
That's funny.
Because it's like you go to a restaurant and 100 people sit down at once, and then you have to serve them all at once. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
And so, and that's what's expected of us is we have to serve 100 people all at once, and so it's crepes are a little tricky.
That's awesome. I love it. Like the lunch is actually part of the learning for the kids. And I mean, as it should be, the food, it's the full whole body like experience of education. I think it's great.
It's the full cycle. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We talked about like the 5th and 6th point, which is applied math and science skills, learning those units of measure, and then also the social skills, the developing social skills of learning how to put a napkin in your lap and asking for things to be passed. But do you feel like there are other ways that you've helped make that successful of those applied sciences as well as the developing social skills?
I mean, in FoodLab, we cover every single solitary subject there is. It really is amazing because it all comes together in those, 2 hours where You have your leadership skills. You have so much science going on. It's crazy, like the baking soda reacting with the vinegar, and you have so much math. You have English language arts. You have also the Spanish speakers teach me so much kitchen Spanish. It's wonderful.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it's just you have history. You're learning about different cultures. It's it's what food should be, and it's what a classroom should be.
Yeah. I think it's great. It sounds fantastic. One of the things I kind of wanted to touch on now is, your program has been going 34 years with Stephanie Ragas' help. So it's been going a while, but how do you think that parents can replicate this style of education for their own kids, helping to create their lunch experience as part of their learning experience at school? What would be your suggestions in creating this program for themselves?
Going to their food service director of their school and talking to them directly to find out how they can make this happen in their school district. I mean,
it's simple.
That's the most direct way. And
simple, but not simple, right?
Well, those conversations we have to start somewhere. And I think that's the simplest way to start. And that's how Stephanie started it. She was a parent at the school, and she didn't want her children to be eating packaged burritos coming from Santa Cruz City schools. And she's like, we can do this ourselves. And it started really simple, where she made soup once a week with the kids. And then she's like, well, we can make soup once a week. We can make it every week, every day of the week. And we can make something besides soup. And so it just spiraled, and it is now, this very essential part of Pacific School. And it can be replicated if those conversations are willing to be had by people.
Yeah, and I can imagine it takes a lot of support trying to get, the principal, the superintendent, the food services person, the teachers, all of those people on board. Is there any advice that you'd give on maybe getting that total mindset going in the school?
I think it comes from trusting those students. It comes from trusting the kids that we're teaching.
With a knife, for one, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the key, trusting that they're going to be safe. Yes, that's our number one priority, but also trusting that they're going to learn, because it's really hard to quantify all of the learning that goes on in FoodLab. I give them little tests, okay, here's this recipe. It's all you get to do it all on your own, and see what happens with the food that, they prepare. But that comes later, that comes months later, but it's really hard to quantify those things. So when you're talking to a teacher and they're talking curriculum minutes, and they're like, well, we have to teach this many curriculum minutes. How am I supposed to give up the students for 2 hours and still teach all of this content? Those teachers also have to trust that we're teaching in the kitchen. These are essential skills, and we're complementing their lessons in their classrooms with our lessons in the kitchen classroom.
Yeah, and I think I've said it before, it's learning that will stick. It's applied knowledge, that they can take that knowledge and then that they're learning in the classroom, apply it to this situation. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I see why this is important, because they're learning it in an applied setting.
Exactly.
I can't imagine this program getting any better, but what do you feel like maybe some long-term goals that you have would be, and maybe how that works into your personal legacy of what you hope to kind of leave behind?
I hope to be able to train other people how to do this. And because it is somewhat of a daunting task to have 5, 11, and 12-year-olds cooking with you for 2 hours and having it be this, very short amount of time to do a lot of work. And I'd like to train other people on how to do this. And one of my dreams is to hold a workshop and be able to train people and have the funding to create that recipe book, or that, what word am I trying to look for? The booklet that will help them, that they can take with them back to their school with the information that they need to start their own food labs.
Yeah.
So,
well, and to take like the daily struggle, I think of how you're working with the daily, just accomplishing it and seeing the greater vision that's down the road. I mean, like you said, when you first bring the kids in, it's just like some basic knowledge of like health cleanliness of how to take care of vegetables or how to do this, but it grows into, learning something greater over time. And then I think that stretches to even a greater well-rounded knowledge of so many other things.
It does. And so the first thing we teach kids in FoodLab is how to wash their hands. I mean,
yeah,
that's the most basic thing. And every time our health inspector comes in and he watches what the kids do and how they work, in the kitchen, he is always so impressed. And he keeps going back to that. Okay, I see they're washing their hands. They're doing, they're being really clean and they have really good practices. And, he loves what we do. And he literally just stands there and watches those kids. And, of course, he looks at the temperatures in our refrigerators and such, but he really appreciates what we're trying to do as well. And that first lesson of washing your hands then leads to, why do we need to wash our hands? What are the bacterias and what are the foodborne illnesses and, all of the things that could go wrong in the kitchen and the health and safety. And, it just brings about so many bigger conversations. And then, they take that out into the world and they watch what people do in restaurants and they see it all happen because, I mean, obviously we all eat and we all eat in many different ways. It's fun.
That is amazing. Like I said, I can't imagine how you could improve on it, but I definitely hope that people, that you come up with that booklet or those courses or whatever to make this happen for so many other kids. Cause like I said, I can see that the greater vision is there and the way that you've been able to get everybody on board, I think is just fantastic. Before we say goodbye, do you have any maybe final parting words for our listeners? And then give us your contact information, how our listeners can get on and find out and see the pictures and the video and everything that we've discussed today.
Well, thank you for having me on this program. It's been really fun to talk with you, and I love sharing what I do. And I know that Stephanie Ragas, who founded this program, also loves sharing the knowledge that she gained from working with the students for 30 years or however long she did. And I really appreciate all of the students that have come through our program and the knowledge that they've gained from being in the kitchen and watching them grow. And there are kids now that are in college that I run into and
that are probably not having a problem adulting for sure.
No, and they still, they speak so fondly of FoodLab and the knowledge that they gained in FoodLab and how important it was to them. And Stephanie can speak to that in that she knows adults, who have started their own restaurants because of what they were taught in FoodLab. And it's just a fun way to spend my time. So my contact information is emiguel@pacificesd.org. And you can also call the school at 831-425-7002 if you would like to speak with me directly. And more information can be found on our school's website at pacificesd.org/FoodLab. And we also have an Instagram that I try to get our kids to do. I try to get them to post pictures, take pictures in the kitchen, and be our social media promoters. And that Instagram is food_lab. So yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I think you're being such a fabulous mentor and example to so many people. I mean, not only the kids in your school, but hopefully as people listen to this podcast and the message gets out about what you're trying to do in your school, that they'll want to implement this type of program into their own school or into their own, make sure that our cooking experiences with our kids are part of their learning, that we as parents and as teachers and government bureaucrats or whatever, we see that as an important part of a kid's child development, that we pass those skills on to them. But again, Emelia's website, her company website, is Pacific esd.org. And then we also have an Instagram page and a phone number that we'll be sure to connect and link up on our show notes page today. But thank you so much for coming on today, Emelia, and joining us and helping to light our minds on fire on this important topic of teaching our kids how to cook and all of those things. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you for listening to The Luminous Mind. To learn more about Emelia Miguel, go to our show notes at theluminousmind.net. Be sure to become a subscriber to our free email list and get our new monthly newsletter. Then check out the Services tab to see how we can continue to assist you, our fire starters. Also, to help us continue production of illuminating content, go to the Sponsor tab at theluminousmind.net for more information on sponsorship and affiliate programs. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, Google+, Pinterest, and now Instagram. Get our free audio content by subscribing on YouTube, iTunes, and Stitcher. To help us grow, consider these easy ways. Tell your friends about us, leave us a review, share our content, tell us how we can help you so together we can continue to light minds on fire and change the paradigm of education.